Radical acceptance is often described as fully opening to life exactly as it is, without resistance, denial, or judgment. In psychological contexts, it's seen as a practice of embracing reality, when fighting against reality would only cause more suffering. But from a non-dual perspective, radical acceptance goes even further. If there is no self, no other, no true control, then who or what is doing the accepting? What is it exactly that is being accepted? In this video, we'll explore radical acceptance not just as a tool for greater resilience, but as a feature of non-dual reality. We'll examine what acceptance means when the self is seen as illusory, when the division between self and other dissolves, and when the very idea of control is revealed as a mental construct. So traditionally, radical acceptance is taught in psychological and spiritual contexts as a way to reduce suffering. For example, in dialectical behavior therapy, radical acceptance is defined as acknowledging reality as it is, even when it's painful, because denying it only deepens distress. Similarly, spiritual teachers may emphasize surrender or opening fully to the present moment rather than fighting against it. This is powerful, of course, in its own right. Many people experience profound healing when they learn to stop resisting what is. Yet this approach often assumes the existence of a separate individual, a me, who can either accept or resist. A me who is in a battle with life and must learn to let go of whatever is happening in that life. Non-duality challenges this assumption. It points to the fact that the me is itself part of the illusion that creates the very struggle in the first place. So from this perspective, radical acceptance is not a technique to be practiced by someone, a person, a me, but a recognition of what has already always been the case. At the heart of non-dual insight is the recognition that the self, the I that we take ourselves to be, is actually a mental construct. Thoughts arise saying, I am doing this, or I should have done that. But when examined directly, no thinking self can actually be found. There are just sensations, perceptions, and thoughts appearing and disappearing, but there's no enduring entity behind them. So what does radical acceptance mean in this context? Without a self, there is no one who needs to accept. Acceptance is not an action, not a choice made by a separate entity. Rather, acceptance is the natural state of reality when we see it as it actually is. Everything is already appearing in awareness, thoughts, emotions, sensations, external circumstances, without the interference of a self. The illusion of I need to accept is simply another thought arising in awareness. Seen from this angle, radical acceptance is not something achieved through effort, but it's a recognition that all phenomena can only be what they already are. Nothing needs to be added, nothing needs to be done. Another key non-dual insight is the collapse of subject-object duality. Normally, we believe in a perceiver, or the self, who perceives other things, other people, situations, external events, etc. This division creates the sense that acceptance is an act performed towards something. I accept you. I accept this situation. I accept my feelings. But when the division between self and other dissolves, what remains is a seamless field of experience. There is no separate me here and world out there. It's all just appearing as one indivisible whole thing. From this perspective, acceptance is no longer a relational act between self and other. It's simply the recognition that what appears, whether that's a sound or a sensation or a thought of someone else, is not actually separate from all that is. There's no distance, there's no gap. When there is no other, there is no thing to push away. What we call acceptance is simply the seeing that everything is already part of an undivided whole that could be no other way than it already is. So, what does acceptance mean when there's no control? So, one of the deepest sources of suffering is the belief in control, the sense that I should be able to manage, shape, direct, change my life according to what I want, my preferences. When events don't align with those preferences, internal resistance arises. This shouldn't be happening. I need to fix this. I can't accept this, the thoughts might say. But when examined closely, control is revealed to be another illusion. Thoughts appear to claim ownership. For example, they might say, I decided this, I did that. But when traced back, decisions and actions simply arise spontaneously, influenced by countless causes and conditions. Life moves on its own. In this recognition, radical acceptance is not a choice to be made, but a surrender into what is already happening. But it's not even really a surrender, it's really just what's already happening. Since there is no controller, there is no alternative path that life could be taking. And so everything is already evolving precisely as it must. Without control, acceptance becomes the only possible reality. Resistance may appear as a thought or feeling, but even that resistance is already part of the unfolding. With the lack of an I and the lack of control, resistance just is, and that's okay. So we can accept our resistance. So if everything is already appearing within awareness and within everythingness seamlessly and without control, why does resistance feel so real? Why does it seem so difficult to accept what's happening? Well, resistance arises from thought patterns that create the illusion of separation and preference. Thoughts compare reality against an imagined version of reality, or how things should be according to the mind, according to the thoughts. So we might think this shouldn't be happening, or I should be different, or they shouldn't treat me this way. These thoughts generate emotional charge, things like anxiety or sadness or anger, which then reinforce the sense of a separate self that's struggling against an external world. So it's the thoughts that create this cycle that feeds itself. And resistance gives rise to more thoughts of self and other and resistance, which gives rise to more resistance and idea of self and other. So it's just this never-ending cycle. But from the non-dual perspective, resistance itself is simply another arising. It does not need to be eliminated. It's already just part of what is and can be accepted. The thought, I can't accept this, isn't a failure of radical acceptance. It is itself part of what is already existing and capable of being accepted. So one of the things that we discover along the way is that thoughts can never practice acceptance. One of the reasons radical acceptance feels so elusive is because thought itself is never satisfied. Thoughts constantly compare reality against an imagined reality, something that only exists in the mind or in thought. But no matter what arises in the present moment, the mind will generate a story of how it could be different. Take something as simple as temperature. When it's hot, the thought arises, it's too hot. I wish it were cooler. But when it's cold, the opposite thought appears. It's too cold. I wish that it were warmer. But notice that even when the temperature shifts, there is never a perfect point of permanent satisfaction. There's no stable place or even reality between too hot and too cold where the mind is happy. The mind always finds a way to say, this isn't right. The same dynamic plays out in countless areas of life. Hunger and fullness, or time and busyness, or relationships. For example, when we're alone, we may long for company. But then in company, we may wish for solitude. And it's not even us that's doing the wishing. It's the thoughts that are telling us there's a better experience elsewhere. But there isn't. All there is this. So, this restlessness isn't necessarily a flaw in life itself, it's just a feature of thought. Thought operates by comparison and evaluation and preference. Its job is to imagine alternatives, but it can't actually deliver those alternatives. How could it? It's just a thought. So, from a non dual perspective, this endless dissatisfaction reveals something quite amazing. Peace cannot be found in thought. It cannot be located in a perfect experience because thought will always find fault in every experience. Peace, true peace, is already present. It's prior to thought. And so when the thoughts stop coming up, the peace is revealed. So, how do we see through these thought patterns? Well, it helps to see the thought patterns for what they actually are. They're just fleeting arisings in, we'll say, the mind that aren't actually us. They don't actually mean anything. So when a thought arises saying this shouldn't be happening, notice that it's just a thought. The power of the thought lies in its ability to claim truth or reality or to make you believe it, basically. And so in direct experience, thoughts are no different from sounds or sensations or the wind, but we don't believe the wind. We don't listen to what it tells us. And so when we think that thoughts are true, we end up believing what they say and then acting out our lives based on an imaginary guide that isn't actually real. Thoughts just come and go in awareness, and they have no more inherent truth than a bird singing a song. From a non dual perspective, seeing through thought patterns doesn't require replacing negative thoughts with positive thoughts because positive and negative thoughts are both the same. They're both arising in whatever this is and telling us something is true, but it's believing it that makes us suffer, whether it's a positive thought or a negative thought. So it simply requires recognizing that all thoughts are appearances. They're already accepted by all that is. The only thing that's not accepting them is our thoughts, and our thoughts aren't true. So this kind of creates a paradox for radical acceptance because if acceptance is already the case, why do practices like mindfulness and self-inquiry help us? The paradox dissolves when we see that practices don't create acceptance, they reveal it. It's practices like mindfulness and self-inquiry and like body scans and other psychological tools simply loosen the grip of thought patterns or help us see reality prior to thought or beyond thought or without thought or however you want to think about it. So, radical acceptance, viewed through the lens of non-duality, reveals itself to be less about doing something, trying to accept, and more about just being and allowing and seeing that non-acceptance is just a thought. It's just a temporary appearance of something that says, I don't want this, when that isn't actually what is the true reality underneath. When there is no self, there's no one who needs to accept. When there is no other, there's no other person that needs to be accepted. They already are. When there is no control, there's no alternative to what's unfolding and no reason not to accept. And that's why when you reach non-duality, acceptance just arises on its own. It's no longer an effortful task that one needs to engage in. It is a emerging property of reality itself.